Greetings, brothers and sisters. CNN's Van Jones felt ambushed by hosts of The View. The View girls, ladies, women on The View set in on Van Jones, and he felt ambushed because he's been on the show a bunch of times, I think. And this is what I've been talking about. The vacuum. I mean, I talked about this way before Trump left, years ago, that Trump was an enemy, that all these different demographics and people on the left were uniting to defeat, and now there's no Trump, and they're not happy. Like, they're not,
You and I were probably the two most vocal critics of Trump during the campaign on CNN, to the point where it was reported that Jared Kushner went in and met with executives at our parent company and asked that you and I be fired.
She's on CNN. Like, I've seen Van Jones there, but I've never seen her, but whatever. Proceed.
And then, all of a sudden you show up working with a nepotism Barbie and nepotism Ken, and you work and showing up, in pictures with Eric Trump and with Candace Owens. And so I think there's people who wonder, and I'm one of them.
She's a wanderer. There's lots of people who wonder, and she's amongst them. She and these other people are wondering, and they like to wonder. They're the wanderers, and they're wondering about Van Jones, and this is what they're wondering. And just a side note, so I do my talking when I'm, doing a screen grab here on something like a video, and then I turn my mic off to let them speak, and I got it reversed. And I was turning the mic off, so I'm having to redo all my parts, and their part is a little bit echoey, but I figured it out coming up, so I'm not going to redo it because it's The View. I don't want to watch it 3 times. It's bad enough I got to watch it twice. So to be clear, when I don't turn my microphone off, my microphone and the computer microphone record the same thing, so you get that sort of reverb. It's not so bad here, but it's worse like for CNN or some of these other, whatever it is. But it's just short-lived here, and then it'll be back to normal.
And so I think there's people who wonder, and I'm one of them, how did that evolution happen? How did you go from being this very principled critic of the Trump administration, as I was?
How did you go from having principles to having none? I'm not trying to insult you or anything. I'm just asking for a friend, well, and myself too, because we're just wondering. We're wondering where you lost your principles. Where'd you lose your principles, Van? Where are they? Where are those principles?
Evolution happened? How did you go from being this very principled critic of the Trump administration, as I was, to all of a sudden being in the White House, celebrating with them and being, and posing for pictures with Candace?
You posed for pictures with Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. I mean, can you explain the evolution to people who are puzzled by it?
We're puzzled by your lack of principles, Van. Explain. It's time for you to explain, or you're going to get canceled. We need some explanation because the cancel culture is on you, Van.
Look, there's no evolution. When Obama was in office, I was working with Newt Gingrich. I was working with Republicans then to get people out of prison, to put the people first. When you are in federal prison, you don't get to vote. You don't get to be on Twitter. You have nothing that is. You have no opportunity.
Wait, when you're in prison, you don't get to vote and you're not on Twitter? It sounds like what's happening to Trumpers, except the prison part. Their votes don't matter, and they can't go on Twitter.
Smiling pictures with Candace Owens, who I think is very hurtful. Okay, do you not regret that? Do you not see that you're giving her legitimacy? You don't regret taking pictures, smiling pictures with Candace Owens? I mean, how does that help the issue?
How does that help the issue? You're legitimizing Candace Owens with your smiles and your pictures. I've covered this before, but there's more to this, right? Sonny gets into it as well.
And
you're going to have to take it out.
Okay, that's where Joy intervenes. I covered this before. But this is where Sonny also sets in on him. Before that, I don't know if it's before or after. I can't tell. I didn't watch the episode. All I know is Van's been ambushed here.
Now, Van, you do spend a lot of time, threading the middle and trying to unite people. But there are those who really accuse you of being a political opportunist, a chameleon.
A chameleon, Van, a political opportunist. Those, not her, not Sonny, but just those. She's speaking for those people who think, look at his face. This is a guy who thinks he's getting ambushed, and he is.
So to speak, who provided a racial cover for former disgraced, twice impeached President Trump.
How can you be former disgraced? She said he's former disgraced President Trump. He used to be disgraced. Now he's undisgraced.
For former disgraced, twice impeached President Trump. You said this, and I quote, Donald Trump, and I get beat up by liberals every time I say this, but I'm going to keep saying it. He has done good stuff for the black community, opportunity zone stuff, black college stuff. There's a side to Donald Trump that I think he does not get enough credit for. Yeah.
How dare you say something like that, Van, even though it, might be true. You can't say stuff like that. It's Donald Trump. See, this is the phase where Trump is gone, and so they're finding collaborators, right? People who said anything positive about Trump or, did anything like remotely supporting Trump by taking pictures with Candace Owens or whatever it is, where now they're turning on their own, right? They're turning on people in their own community, Hollywood liberals, Hollywood Democrats, who did anything, right? This is the cancel culture. And they're not happy. Like, why not be happy that Trump's gone? Like, for just a couple months. Like, celebrate that you hated Trump for so many years and he's gone. Can't you be happy for like a month? Couple of months? But now they're just turning on each other, right?
Yet, just recently, you cried on CNN when Joe Biden was elected the 46th president.
Remember that. Remember this? This is hilarious.
Van, what are your thoughts?
It's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters.
And you're saying this about Joe Biden? Is that what you're saying? Because that's not how I see Joe Biden. None of those things resonate with me and Joe Biden and lots of people.
And it's easier for a whole lot of people. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry if the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry if the president's going to be happier to have babies snatched away or send dreamers back for no reason. This is vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered. I can't breathe.
And you said it's easier to be a parent now. Character matters now. Truth matters. You even mentioned George Floyd and said a lot of people felt they couldn't breathe.
Yeah, that's the masks. We're all wearing masks right now, which according to Fauci is going to last at least until the fall. At least. They'll review it. Here it is. There's that. Anthony Fauci reveals you can finally shed your corona mask. When asked about getting rid of the virus, not yet. When the level of the virus is so low, it's not a threat at all, then at that point you can start thinking in terms of not having a uniform wearing of masks, but we certainly not near that yet. If everything falls into the right place and we get this under control, it's conceivable that you might be able to pull back a bit on some of the public health measures as we get into late fall this year, but there's no guarantee of that.
George Floyd and said a lot of people felt they couldn't breathe. People in the black community don't trust you anymore. What is your response?
Wow, that's kind of aggressive. Where is that coming from? Sunny? Like, that's not very sunny, Sunny.
Oh, well, I don't think that's true. The entire quote I said was that Trump has done a lot of good stuff he doesn't get credit for. And then I went on to say the reason I didn't get credit for it is because he's done all this horrific stuff, said all this horrific stuff, and it completely erases what he's done. But what happens is social media will take the clip, but they won't show the full context. And so what I will say is this. My entire life, has been about bringing people together to solve tough problems for people at the very bottom who don't have anything.
You know you're in trouble when you have to explain yourself, when you start explaining yourself. There's no reason to, right? Everybody's so, wrapped up in the how dare you belief stuff and all of it. And explaining yourself is never going to work because people don't care, right? They're not listening to you. Nobody's listening, right? They're listening to get what they want to hear. I mean, this is far beyond just the liberal community. This is everybody in America. People listen to other people in terms of they want to, they want to hear something, especially if they're against you and you offend them in some way and they give themselves permission just to unload on you. This is, everybody's opinion matters and it doesn't. Like, nobody's really does. I mean, everything's going to happen the way it's going to happen regardless of people's opinions. And everyone thinks that their comment matters and they get to critique other people and whatever it is. Out of being outraged. Like people don't really do anything to you. It's just that their beliefs are different than yours. I mean, that's what you see now. That people aren't actually doing anything to you, but the fact that they believe things and they act in a way that goes against what your internal picture of what the world is supposed to be like, and you get offended by it, and then you just want to blast them. It's not about them changing. You don't want to hear their reason for doing it. You don't want to hear any of these things. And this is the cancel culture. It goes far beyond the liberals. It's everybody. Right-wing people and Trump complain about the cancel culture, and then they attack people all the time, wanting them to be silenced. It's just that they don't have the power anymore, and that's why they're complaining. Because Trump supporters don't run the social media platforms. And so they're being deplatformed and they're whining about it, but they were doing the same thing. I experienced the QBs trying to practice cancel culture on me, right? Not just the QBs, but Trumpers. You say something that disagrees with them, they attack you and call you names or do whatever, spam your videos, they'll report your videos and things like this. That's cancel culture. Everybody trying to silence people that disagree with their beliefs. So don't explain yourself, right? Only, I'll make a comment video and I'll explain myself only so I can crap on person leaving a stupid comment, right? So I can illustrate that they don't know what they're talking about. And so I'll explain myself because I can then demonstrate that the other person's full of crap. Like they just made stuff up that isn't true. But I don't want them here. Like I'm not explaining to them. I don't owe them an explanation. Yeah, just go. Like go somewhere else. You don't have to be here. I mean, it's not like some kumbaya moment where I explain myself so we can better understand each other. I understand you perfectly fine. I understand the fragility of your belief system and the hostile nature of your personality, and getting offended and feel like people are doing something to you just because they have different beliefs than you do. That's probably the biggest problem that we see right now. What you're seeing here, what you're witnessing here, and this goes for people in the truth community, it goes for people on the right wing especially. I mean, also the really ardent left-wingers and the really ardent right-wingers, the QBs and the Trumpers and all these various people who are looking for other people to mirror back their personal beliefs. I've noticed this over the years in the comments section of my videos. And it was just so obvious to me that people in the truth community suck as bad as everybody else. There's no, differentiating just on beliefs. See, it's a very, I don't know if simple-minded or, emotionally immature is the way to frame it. But you see now people are specifically trying to congregate based in shared beliefs. They form brief alliances of shared beliefs so that they can attack other people that don't believe what they believed. I've seen this over the years in terms of people saying over and over to me again, well, I don't believe in everything that you believe in. Like, why do you even have to say that out loud? Like, why would anybody think that any two people could believe everything exactly the same? They wouldn't have any disagreement on something. I mean, there's just no way that's possible. Like, I don't even agree with myself, right? I mean, it's something where, or at least in terms of there is the higher nature and there's the ego. And so we all have that in us, right? And so there's no sense of, there's things I know to be right spiritually, but I personally don't like them. I mean, there's information I get from God, and God wants me to do something, or God shows me something, and I'm not psyched about it. And I go, God, hey, you know what, God, I don't agree with everything that you believe in, God. Like, I mean, it's just silly. And so what you have now is everybody is just really into what they believe, like what they think that they know about what's going on in the world and their personal beliefs. And that's the wrong way to conduct yourself. In terms of getting along with other people or just judging other people, assessing, not judging, but assessing, right? In terms of evaluating other people, it's not about their beliefs. That some of it, their beliefs are a reflection of who they are. But it's really about, whether they're an a-hole or not, right? I mean, that's what it should always come down to. Because there's plenty of people that do the heartfulness meditation that is, I mean, I love the heartfulness meditation and the system, but I don't get along with lots of people who do it. I mean, not just because of beliefs, but just because I don't like them and they don't like me or whatever it is, You understand this? And we share something. We share a love of the heartfulness meditation. That's something to bond over or whatever it is. That's a potential, something that you can bond over when you have things in common with other people. But there's lots of things you don't have in common with other people. And, there's people that you resonate with just because you have similar similar consciousness, and you have, I don't know what it is. You have some sort of, your souls are connected in some way. You have a soul connection. You have, a previous existence here or somewhere else with the person, past lives or whatever you want to call it. And so, the soul resonates because there's familiarity, and your egos might not get along, but your souls do. There's some reason that the person's in your life, they're part of your plan. And so there's that, right? And that isn't about beliefs. But you have now is everyone's so superficial because people's beliefs change. I mean, look at what happened at the Capitol Hill riots. And so there was a common enemy that brought them together. They all believed that Trump was screwed out of his, screwed on the election. And so they were all together, right? And you had Hubies and you had Trumpers, you had Trump. And then things went south, and it didn't play out well for Trump and the Capitol Hill rioters, right? It didn't play well for them. They thought it was they saw it going in a different way, and they thought there was more support for them than there was. They didn't know they were walking into a trap, and they were being, played and used. And then all of a sudden, people were getting arrested, and Trump's getting impeached, and there was Rudy and Sidney QB were getting sued, And all of a sudden, everyone started to turn on each other. They realized there was no plan, that Q was a joke, Q wasn't real, and that Trump wasn't really behind these things, right? And so when that all happened, they turned on each other. Trump turned on his supporters and QBs, even though he put them up to it, sort of. I mean, partially his responsibility for bringing them there and firing them up. And they went out and they stormed the Capitol. And maybe he was into it, maybe he wasn't. We don't know what he wanted. But when it went south, Trump turns on people. Trump has turned on people over and over again. I said this, I criticized his treatment of Mike Pence, and I got a bunch of Trumpers leaving hostile comments and saying how bad a guy Mike Pence is. And it's like talking to children. I meant to address this earlier, but I didn't get time. It's like talking to a child, because I've said over and over again, I don't like Mike Pence. I don't, he's a traditional politician. He's not somebody that I ever liked. I didn't like his energy or his consciousness. And I like Trump much better, just as a character. But Mike Pence got completely rolled and worked by Trump. Trump completely turned on him in a way that's just not cool. Not just in terms of it being Mike Pence, but Trump's treatment of other people, because that's just not cool what he did. Trump values loyalty, but he uses people. He's used people all along. He turns on people. This is part of his character. And because he isn't my savior and I'm not waiting for him to save me, I just, I enjoyed Trump's good qualities. I enjoyed the things that he did that were funny. I enjoyed his character in the show, but I knew he was not a person that you could trust. And Occasionally I had to point it out, not just in terms of his, he has weaknesses of character, like they all do. They're politicians and they're narcissists and they're very selfish. They're not there for you. And so some of the ways that Trump has turned on people, look at some of the people that were in his inner circle that he turned on. I mean, I can't remember all of them. I'll just point out a few. Well, first of all, Steve Bannon helped him win the first election by having Trump go far to the right and be on Alex Jones's show and go, cultivate a relationship with the truth community. And he flirted with the truth community the same way he flirted with cubies. He pretended to be a truther, sort of, to get votes and to get support and use people, because Trump uses people. He's a user, like all these politicians are. And Steve Bannon helped Trump quite a bit. And then Steve Bannon went to work for Trump, and they had a falling out, and Trump turned on him, and Steve Bannon turned on him back, and Trump called him Sloppy Steve because he always does that stuff, right? And, even though Bannon was a big supporter of Trump, and even afterwards, he was a big supporter. Another one was Michael Cohen, who had been a Trump fixer forever, had been around fixing Trump's problems and, paying off porn stars and things like this. And Michael Cohen had been, loyal and valuable to Trump. And then they had a falling out. Trump completely turned on him, right? And Trump, and Michael Cohen's now in jail. Trump turned on him and went after him savagely. And these were people who were Trump people in Trump's corner. And they displeased Trump, and he goes after people. He tries to bury them. This is what he talked about in The Apprentice. As long as the person's serving you, it's okay. But as soon as you get tired of them or they don't please you in some way, you try to destroy them. Trump went after all these people, with a killer instinct type of mentality. John Bolton, another one. John Bolton was a nightmare. I don't know why anybody would hire John Bolton. John Bolton tried to talk Trump into war with Iran. And then, they had a falling out, which of course they were, because they were the same guy. And they went after each other. And John Bolton's written a book, and he's gone after Trump ever since. This is what happens with Trump, right? I mean, there's just divorces, all these things. He's a guy that he's with you, and he treats you okay or whatever it might be, but then he cuts you loose. I mean, he did this with vendors. I talked about this before. There was this guy, a Republican barber I went to when I lived in Vegas, right, in the Vegas area. And there was this guy, he knew all kinds of people worked with Trump. They were vendors for Trump. And this is when Trump was running for president. And this guy was a Republican. He said, all I hear is bad things. He screws over his vendors. And I mean, Trump talked about the art of the deal. He likes getting the benefit of the deal. He cut good deals for himself and put vendors. I mean, this is something that people know about Trump. He turns on people. He's not that guy that you thought he was, right? He's not in it for the little guy. He's a billionaire or, fake billionaire, whatever it is. He wants to be wealthy. He wants to be powerful. And he used people to get there. And he turned on him, just like in the Capitol riots, because that's what Trump does. When you're no longer of use to him, he turns on you. And that, he has other good qualities. Like I said, I enjoy the guy, but I'm not, I'm not deluding myself like Trumpers are, because you guys are desperate to save whatever you think the country is, that, it's an evil empire that can't be saved. It's an evil empire that's falling apart, right? I mean, you're not realistic about what we are here as a country and as a culture and all these things. You're deluding yourself to believe that America was ever great. It's great in the sense it's a great empire. It's a great evil empire that has used people and devours resources all over the world. And now the, world culture, the people that run the world culture are cutting America loose and Americans as being the sort of dominant culture. And America is going to be starved out and there's going to be a collapse. And when there is, this is what's happening. People are at war over beliefs. People think that what you should do is find people that are like you and believe what you believe and turn into a little gang and go after the people that don't believe what you believe. And this is how it's going to break down. I mean, this is, you see it here on The View, right? People are turning on each other, because that's all they know. They all just attack people on whatever people believe, what they believe inside themselves. You do something or say something that goes against a, imaginary set of rules that other people who are supposedly in your belief group, right? This is, you see this playing out in the truth community all the time. You say something that goes against the consensus of like people in the truth community. You have all these people making videos, and this is what happens when you have people who watch each other's videos and they come up with what they consider a joint view of what really happened. And oftentimes in the truth community, people get it completely wrong. And it becomes part of the truth community dogma. And this happened when the Cubies invaded as well, right? The QB dogma started having an effect on the overall truther dogma. And then when you disagreed with people, they immediately have to point it out, She's a man. It's flat. Trust the plan. Where we go one, we go all. You're not doing that. You're not saying what I believe. Why are you not saying what I believe? We all believe it, right? Me and my dopey friends all believe the same thing. Why are you not? Why are you saying something different? I don't understand. Shill, you're a shill. It's like you ever see the invasion of the body snatchers when they find somebody who's not been snatched and they yell out this like alien scream. Like that's what's like on the truth community when you disagree with the consensus. And so this is where we are, right? This is where we are as a species, where people have a superficial grasp of reality and are, basing everything on beliefs and grouping up and being a part of a group, a group egregore of beliefs or whatever, a group consciousness. But oftentimes, the people that are in that group, you're going to find, like any group that you go into, you're going to find people like you. Like there's some people like me that do the heartfulness meditation. And there's some people like me who are Christians or Muslims or Jews or atheists. They have a similar approach, right? They have a similar sort of persona and personality, and, you just resonate with the same consciousness. You might be in one group or another. And there's Democrats and Republicans like me. There's, whatever it might be, independents. Doesn't really matter. There's people who are, kind of on your level or whatever it is of consciousness and your orientation to the world. And their beliefs might be different, but like you have a lot of things in common. And there are people who aren't maybe necessarily have the same sort of things in common, but you have a connection, right? You have some things where, like my wife and I have, different personalities. She's more outgoing, and it works well because she does a lot of the things that I do poorly, right? Which I'm really grateful to have somebody who does those things, right? Oftentimes you'll have like a group therapy, like when I used to do group therapy, and there'll be two people who are very similar and they'll be competing, right? They have a very similar personality and they compete with each other. They don't get along at all. And so, you have people that you're going to resonate with in your life, and you shouldn't blow up your relationships because they don't believe what you believe. That's one of the problems with truthers, it's difficult for me as well. It's difficult to talk to a sheeple, somebody who believes everything the mainstream media. It's very hard to find anything in terms of common ground. But people have relatives and things. You saw this with the Cubies. People are, blowing up relationships over their beliefs. And there's no real, the beliefs aren't really all that important because nothing's going to change. Like the beliefs aren't going to change anything. You and your group aren't going to change what's going to happen. All the beliefs in the world aren't going to stop the empire from collapsing. The empire is collapsing, and this is the, one of the symptoms of the empire collapsing is nobody gets along. Years and years ago, I was at a gathering, and there was this old Italian guy who's from Italy who was, often spent time with Master Charge. He traveled around with him and things. He was a wealthy guy, and he spent a lot of time with Chargy. And it was a gathering in America, and me and him were friends. This guy, we talked occasionally. And there was a lot of drama, a lot of people fighting or disagreeing. There was, whatever, some kids had done some things and acted out in some way, against their parents, but it came back to Chargy, and, people weren't getting along. And part of it's cleaning, which, of course he knew, because cleaning happens. I've talked about cleaning at these gatherings, and, there's always that. But this guy said to me, his name was Salvatore, he said, the one thing that Chargy dislikes is when everyone's at each other's throats, because that's when all the work stops. And, the cleaning happens during that period, so there's that as well. So there's, some benefit. But if you have a situation in your family or at work where everybody's fighting, I mean, think about this when you're in a situation with your wife or your husband, your significant other, and let's say you fight for a couple of days, you're arguing, you're not getting along, then everything that you're working on stops, and it actually goes backwards. And when there's disharmony in your family or at work or whatever, or in your party, your political party, or you see this on a team, some kind of sports team, you're like, wow, they have so much talent. Why can't they win? Well, because there's disharmony. If you're not getting along with your teammates or your significant others and spouses, everything stops. And that's happening in America. Nobody's getting along right now. People in their own belief groups don't get along. You see people fighting amongst themselves. When this QB stuff was starting to happen, where I started making some videos, I don't know, about 6 months ago, somebody sent me this clip, and there was this Christian guy. He seemed like, a nice person. He was a former QB, and he had QB friends, and he was really into being a QB. And he realized that the Q stuff was fake, that the Q wasn't real. He had all these doubts about it. And so he went and he had a conversation with two of his friends who he knew in real life, and said, look, I can't do this anymore. I don't believe in it. And one of his friends went on the internet and basically blackballed him in the Q community and attacked him and said he's dead to us. And the guy's making a video well, WTF, right? We were friends in real life and stuff. And I had my own process I went through, and you guys completely turned on me. And, this is not just for QBs. This goes across the board. You see it on The View. You see it everywhere. You do something that offends the collective consciousness of the group. You go against people's beliefs, and they go batshit crazy. I mean, they just they go apeshit on you, right? I mean, think about all these things that have the way people turn on each other. It shows you two things. One, this is two symptoms of the apocalypse. Two symptoms that your system is completely crumbling right before you. Number one, that people don't really believe in or have faith in their own beliefs. Because when somebody, this is, especially for the QBs there, because Q isn't real. Q was a deception, right? It was a psychological operation. And so deep down, people knew that. The QBs had a sense of it, or at least they maybe they liked some of the stuff that was going on with the Q stuff, but they realized that Q itself just didn't make sense. And on some level, on a heart level, certainly on a soul level, they know they're being deceived, different levels of their consciousness. So they have to form a very rigid, I talked about this in The Choice. When people are living a lie, and they are, certain lies are fundamental building blocks of a movement. There's lies about Trump and there's lies about Biden, right? Obviously, you can see those easier. And that the fundamental building block is that Joe Biden is a good candidate and he'll make a good president. Deep down, the Democrats know that's not true. He's a lifelong politician, scumbag, MNFer, right? Deep down, they know what Joe Biden is. Deep down, Trumpers know what Trump is. Trump isn't their savior, the people who love Trump and worship Trump. He isn't, as good a guy as they wish he was, right? He's got all these character flaws. And, all the Democrats and all the Republicans who think their party is out to save them when all the politicians have been bought and sold by foreign governments and corporations, and the political system can't do anything for you, or it won't do anything for you, and it won't, talk truth to power. They all have their masters and their handlers. And so all these people who hang their hat on whatever it is, whatever their belief system is, and deep down they know it's faulty. Deep down they know they're following a false god. They're following something that isn't legitimate, and they're spinning themselves. They're falling for the hype and the cult nature of their group, and they're deluding themselves to belong with other people and whatever it is, right? A lot of people are like that now. And so when somebody goes against that, they know deep down that they have their own doubts. And instead of confronting their own doubts, they try to kill the other person in some way or another. They try to extinguish the other person. And that's happening. People who are saying things that go against the mainstream culture right now, but it's even on a lower level in the truth community and other places. People go after and try to silence and troll and attack people or whatever for believing different things. I get negative comments, hundreds of them every day, and I'm banning people all the time, anybody who does this, because they are, it's not about their beliefs, it's about who they are as a person, who you are as a human being, that you're going to attack and turn on people because you're not sure and confident in your own beliefs, right? Like, I know the heartfulness system works, and so when people criticize it, I don't, whatever, right? Like, okay, it's not for you, please go move on, right? Go, do something else, watch somebody else's videos, right? I mean, whatever I say here, like, I'm not, yeah, okay, you don't like it, like, like it's not, I don't even remember my videos from yesterday. I mean, I literally have trouble. Sometimes people are quoting me in comments, and I don't even like, what does that even mean? I'm like, oh, it's something I said in this other video. Like, I can't remember some of the ideas. Like, I have to look at the video for a while and try to remember what's in it, because it just doesn't mean anything to me, right? The information flows through me. I, assess what's going on with my, meditative state, bringing God into the, God into the decision making and reading of the situation. And then I just make the video and I move on. Like, I don't cling to it. And that's the best way to do it. It's not, permanent. It's never permanent, because I've seen when more information comes out, my opinion changes, or, I see it in a more clear way because I was limited by the information that was available. And sometimes God allows you to believe something that's not true, or actually encourages it because it'll motivate you to do something, or motivate you to, move in some way or another. And then later on you find out that you misread the situation, or it wasn't perfectly clear. I mean, that's life. You're going to change your opinions on things because you're evolving. Your ability to perceive the world should be changing and getting better, because you're getting closer to God, and you're, becoming more of a soul. Your soul is becoming more, and your ego is becoming less. I mean, that's supposed to be happening for everybody, especially in the later years. Your back half of your life, your soul is emerging, and your ego should be diminishing. But you have this, ego celebrated, an egocentric type of culture where people's egos get more and more, they develop more and more, and their soul diminishes more and more. And then the person is just basically a demon, because they no longer have any connection to God, and their egos have become monstrous. And the ego is, the ego doesn't want to be extinguished, so it lashes out at, in a narcissistic, sociopathic way at everything and anything that confronts it and goes against it. And so your beliefs aren't supposed to be solid things. They're not supposed to be permanent. And you're going to have to adapt and change your beliefs based in new information or just what has to happen. You have to let go of things. I mean, there's going to be time in the future. I mean, for most people who are in the so-called truth community, you should realize by now it's not going your way. It's not going our way. That the system can't be fixed. The information that we have, the different views that we have, the different version of reality that we have, our understanding of everything that's going on in the world in terms of a shadow government, and the way that you can see through the indoctrination, you can see through the illusion to some extent, and you realize that the majority of people aren't going to wake up in this way. Maybe even most people were partially awake or not at all. And even if they did, it's not going to change anything. And the system is going in a direction which can only lead to more tragedy and more disaster before it dies completely. It's going to go out poorly. And then what, right? And then what are you going to do? Then what are we going to do? So since nothing's going to change, and you're going to come to terms with this on your own. I mean, everyone has to understand this. The system cannot be saved. And if that's true, if what I'm saying is true, then why are you spending all your time just staring at videos telling you how bad the system is. You know, right? Like if you're going to get divorced, why sit around and talk to people about how bad your future ex-spouse is going to be? Like why dwell on that? You have to start building a new life, right? You have to, all right, what am I going to do now? Like this thing is over. This relationship is over. I mean, America's going through a divorce, and it's a bad divorce, and very few people are thinking about the post-divorce situation. Like, what are you going to do when America is divorced? Like, this is, I guess I'll make that the title of the video. What are you going to do now that America is, in the process of divorcing? What's your post-divorce life going to be like? And divorce means so much because it's not just Americans divorcing each other and, all these things, but everyone's stuck with each other, right? But it's also the world divorcing America and, the world divorcing this sort of, the lifestyle that people have, not the wealthy, but the middle class and the upper middle class, like that's being taken away, right? I mean, the people who are on the, various demographics that don't have power, who are Democrats, think that they are going to get a bigger slice of the pie because that's what Biden and everyone is telling them. But the pie is shrunk so much that there is no pie, right? The pie is being taken away from everybody, and it's not being taken away from the wealthy people, the trillionaires and the billionaires and a lot of the famous people. They're going to survive one way or another, and they're going to keep their lifestyle after the economic reset. But the Democrats and Republican, just normie people, average people, the Trumpers and the anti-Trumpers and all these people who are fighting with each other are all going to get screwed over, right? Their lifestyle's everyone's lifestyle is going to take a hit, and there's going to be depopulation. There's going to be whatever else is going on. There's going to be real stuff happening, real negative stuff that's going to go down in terms of even natural events. And what happens when you turn on the news and you realize there's nuclear missiles hitting America and hitting other countries, right? That's going to change things. I mean, what's going to be important? Your belief's going to be important to you then, right? And things are really going to happen. Or there's a solar flare and you go to turn on your electricity and there is none. And it doesn't come back on. And there's no, you're cut off from your phone and your news sources and the internet and everything. What happens if a solar flare wipes out, there's a big flash or something? I mean, the magnetic fields are going to come down in the very near future. The poles are going to flip. And when that happens, solar flares can hit the world. And when they do, they can short out the electrical grid like nothing, or EMPs or something. There's multiple countries that have the ability to shut down the electrical grid in other countries, and certainly their own country. And so the electrical grid going down in future wars or because of natural events is going to happen, to some degree, at least partially in some places globally. And I mean, half the country or, all these places, major cities and things. And so what happens when that happens? You don't have electricity, you don't have heat, you don't have water, you don't have all these things. Your belief's going to be important then, So, I mean, this is what people have to realize is going down, and there is a solution. I offer a solution here, which is you connect to God in a deeper level, and God will guide you through and help prepare you for what's about to happen, for your specific situation where you live and what your specific situation is how that's going to unfold. Because some people are just going to leave and die, right? Well, you need God to help your soul go. You need to be connected to God and your soul to help your soul go where it needs to go when you die. I mean, that has to happen for everybody. And so, since death is inevitable, what are you doing to prepare for that? And don't, if you're going to believe some religious BS, religion is like the QB of God, right? Religions promise you something, you're going to go to heaven if you do the religion. That's not true. That's blatantly not true. It's just a bunch of false beliefs they give you and they false promises, so you don't have to worry about having a relationship with God. Oh, we'll take care of that for you. Just give us some money and, follow our, be a part of our thing. You just be a part of our thing and we'll take care of you when you die. Okay, good. I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, you do have to worry about it. It's not, if you're not connected to God when you're close to dying, your soul, like you should be in your dreams and just your mind should and your heart should be wandering to where you're going to go next, right? Your soul should be reconnecting and going to where it needs to go after you die. Oftentimes people who are confused and lost in life, their souls don't leave the planet. They don't go where they're supposed to go. And that's where you have like ghosts and all these things that happen. Because people are lost in life and they don't prepare for death and they don't connect to God internally. A lot of religious people are, believing something that isn't true, and they, die in a fearful and whatever state, and they don't need to move on, right? That's why they were burning the bodies. They cremate the bodies in India and became a practice because sometimes souls hang around their dead bodies. And so they don't know where to go. And so you're doing the soul a favor by burning the body so it doesn't try to come back. Sometimes a soul like lay in a body trying to get it to work and move even though the body's dead, and the soul doesn't know where to go. And so you have this situation where so many people are so materialistic and lost in their own delusionary ego and their psychological depravity, and they die and they don't know what to do. They die, they're in a state of shock, they're disconnected from their spiritual sense, and their soul doesn't know how to, return to its, there's a part of you here and a part of your soul is somewhere else, right? And you're connected to that other part. But if that connection is broken, or you just, you're too gross to keep the connection there, then the soul doesn't go back to where it's supposed to go. And that's a huge problem. And so connecting to your soul for just in terms of, a spiritual life and connecting to God, which is, this is some of what the heartfulness system does for people. It helps them reconnect with their soul and their spiritual essence and find their soul's path and connect to God. And so when they die, they have this, an easy time transitioning back to where they need to go. When Lalaji, the first master of the heartfulness system, was dying, he was with all these people were around him, and he said, yeah, I'm about to die. And they said, they were like, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, why? They were like, why do you know? And he goes, because all the liberated souls are around me. They're coming to escort me back to the brighter world. So this is the number one reason that you're going to die, that our death is all inevitable, that connecting to your soul and being able to transition, because it's a difficult transition. Dying is, scary, especially for younger people, and it is something where there's a lot of unknown. It's unknown, no matter how spiritual you are, it's still, there's some unknown in death, right? And so this is one of the major reasons to have a connection, a spiritual connection, not listen to some religious BS promises that they can't deliver. Just because you grew up in your religion, you were promised these things. The religion can't promise this, because the religions are materialistic, and the people who run the religions are materialistic people. And so they can't promise you something spiritual, from a material place. It just can't happen. And so connecting to God for this reason, and then everything else, you have a specific set of circumstances that's going to unfold as the system crumbles around you. And, negotiating those circumstances without God is going to be impossible. And so this is, the heartfulness meditation was given for this reason. And I don't, it's up to each person to, it's not like joining the organization is going to do it for you. You have to cultivate an internal relationship with God, and the cleaning and the transmission of the heartfulness system help you with that, help you, facilitate that connection. But you have to do the work. It's something that you have to participate in. It's something that you have to, go within and do. And if you don't do it, there's lots of people in the heartfulness system that aren't able to do it, right? They do it, they feel the transmission, they do it for a number of years, but they don't really, work at it in the way that needs to be worked at, right? They're not evolving, they're not changing, they're not growing as a person. I've seen this over and over again. And so it's still up to the person. It's not the organization that's important. It's not the beliefs in the organization that are important. It's that you're engaging in the process. You're actively pursuing a relationship with God, because most people are scared of God because God's going to tell them things they don't want to hear. That's, and that happens. Like I hear things all the time I don't want to hear. I see all kinds of things I don't want to see. Maybe not, maybe not now as much, but they're not pleasant, right? Like I am enjoying what's going on now with the collapse because it's interesting, and for some reason I find it funny, the apocalaughs. But I know what's coming, right? And I mean, I know kind of what's coming, more so than most people, but it's not, it's not, there's going to be a lot of surprises for me and everybody else. It's just, some of those surprises are going to be very unpleasant because we're all addicted to and dependent on this current system. It's all that we know. And as it collapses and we have to change and adapt, that's always difficult. I mean, especially if you think about it being difficult, it will be difficult, right? I mean, because we all have the capacity to adapt and change. And if we don't have the mental flexibility and we're, complaining and we're making it worse than it is, then of course it's going to be difficult, right? The more you put negative energy into it, the more difficult it's going to be. And a lot of people just won't be able to make the transition from the empire that's collapsing to something else, to something that potentially will ultimately be better. And it's going to be harsh living conditions and those things as well. And so your beliefs aren't going to mean anything. When the real shit goes down, right, when it really gets, things start to get reals, your beliefs aren't going to mean anything. It's not going to be, it's not going to help you that you knew some more things than the sheeple, right? It's going to be how willing you are to adapt and change and the level of connection you have with God and your soul, and you're able to navigate this difficult transition and adapt to a new way of being, right? And so the signs of the apocalypse are here. The infighting, the people at each other's throats, people clinging rigidly to their beliefs. I mean, the moral breakdown, the weird stuff that's going on, just all of the, agenda that's being pushed out there, and the powers that be changing the rules, changing what, I made a long video about this in the Super Bowl yesterday. They're changing what American life is about right now. I mean, they're doing it in a very obvious way. And so all those things are signs of a system, an empire that's collapsing. And a bunch of, the people that control the system, a bunch of people controlling the system who have lost control of their illusion. Their illusion has grown a life of its own, and they're trying to do everything it's like the tech companies losing control of their AI, right? There's all these ways the people controlling the system, the people I call the controllers, who have lost control of it. They've lost control of what's happening on the internet. They've lost control of, many of their slaves, their people, right, who are now waking up in one way or another. They've lost control of the environment. They've lost control of what the earth is doing. They've lost control of all these things. And they're flipping out, and they're desperate to try to regain control. And all these things that they're doing, the global reset, aren't going to work, right? Because, it's time. It's time for this thing to end, right? It's time for a new yuga. And when the new yuga comes in, it's very hard to go from one yuga to another because the energy is just different. The vibrations are just different. Some people, it's easy because they never fit into this yuga. Like if you didn't fit into this yuga, then there's a good chance that you'll be thriving in the next one. And a lot of the younger people and things like this. But in terms of the transition, it's going to be difficult. And having a relationship with God is going to be, like something that has to happen. It's no longer going to be, you can choose not to, but choosing not to is basically dying or failing and just, you just can't make it, right? You're just not going to make the cut. That's why only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.